Excellent. Okay. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law under COVID-19 emergency declaration, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City of Cleveland Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to the conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raised hand function before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand function can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located at the bottom of the WebEx screen. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on a particular case via our website and email. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter, and those will be entered into the record. We'd like to call the March 11th, 2021 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Colicchio.
Here.
Mr. Collier. Mr. Santoro. Mr. Dreyer.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik.
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here. Here.
Also in attendance today is Ava Schmidt from our staff, Stuart Hastings from the Law Department, and Carl Brunges of our staff, who will be running the presentation as himself today. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. We will begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call our first applicant forward. Please state your name please unmute your microphone, state your name for our records, and tell us about your project. We ask everyone else to be respectful of the presenter and please mute your connections if you are not presenting. We'd like to call the first applicant, Goma Sushi and Speakeasy, located at East 4th Street Historic District, the Sincere Building at 2074 East 4th Street.
Good morning. My name is Mike Bizjack. I'm with Sesco Imaging here on behalf of Goma. I believe Dante Bocuzzi, the one of the owners, is present as well, and the managing partner Pat was just texting me saying he was trying to get on the meeting right now. Pat D'Onofrio. We're here to present signage for this project. I know that the renovation, a part of the storefront and the patio and other things were already before this board. Now we're here with the signage. This is building or the property is located at the northeast corner of East 4th and Prospect. We are proposing 3 signs. The first sign, actually, if you could switch to, I apologize, I have these pages slightly out of order. If you could switch to page 2 just so you could take a look at the existing conditions. The photo on the left is showing the corner and basically the entire storefront aside from the truck that is in the way. This is the old Chinato location. And then the second picture on the right is looking up East 4th Street. If you go to page 3, please. This shows the the picture on the left shows the view from Prospect, sort of kind of looking west. And then the picture on the right shows the view from East Fourth looking basically south. If we could switch back to the first page again now. The first sign we're proposing will replace the previous Chinato sign. This is a corner sign. It's 2'3" by 11' 5" overall sign consisting of 5 2'3" by 2'1" cubes with a red reveal between each cube. The sign will have individual shallow channel letters with trimless faces, and it will also have a halo lit red reveal between each cube, as you can see in the view to the right, showing the illuminated nighttime version. If you could switch to page 4, please. This shows the existing conditions, the old brackets from the previous sign. We will reuse those brackets and attach to the building with that. So we won't be penetrating any further into the building. No additional holes, no additional mounting, anything like that. It'll be the same conditions as far as how it mounts to the building. If you could go to page 5, please. And this shows the sign in place. Will be viewed. It can be viewed from looking straight at the corner, looking up East Fourth, or looking up Prospect. We don't show a Prospect view, but it's the same as the East Fourth, just the opposite direction. There are additional signs. You could go to the next page, please. These are individual letters, plate letters. Actually, the next page. These will be, there are 2 of these signs. One is located over the entrance door, will be on a shallow canopy. Canopy is, will be red. We'll have downlighting over the entrance door and uplighting on the letters only. Uplighting will be red, downlighting will be white. On Prospect, this will be even shallower and simply a kind of an accent band with plate letters sitting up on top. Those will be uplit with red. The next couple pages show those elevations with the signs in place. If you could switch to those. This shows the Prospect and this shows the East Fourth. The last page is from a plan view, just showing the patios, the layout of the space, the location of the space, location of the signs. Are there any questions regarding any of this?
Thank you for the presentation. We're going to move now into feedback from the local design review committee before we get to questions from the commission. So is there someone here? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good morning. Tom Strinsky from Historic Downtown Cleveland Design Review in the Gateway District. The committee approved this as presented. I mean, they did question the need for the Prospect secondary signage, but the applicant Dante was felt like it was an important piece at the pedestrian level, so we were okay with that. And also, just for the record, also we did reach out to me and the property owner reached out to the owner of the condo of the second floor. It's a commercial tenant, and he had no objection to this sign either. I just want to make sure that's on the record.
Excellent, thank you. Any feedback from any other city departmental staff? All right. And then we'll move on to the commission. We'll open the floor for commission's questions and comments.
Madam Chair, Ms. Bailey, and Mr. Strickland.
Thank you. I just opened my chat, or my attendance. Go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
Hi, I like the cube signs. The question is the red is the company's signature color?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, screen.
just one that the color can just be toned down just a little. It still can be red, but just toned down, just the cube one. It's already strong as far as the size of it. Just wonder if that color itself is the signature, or can it be just toned down just slightly?
Or to ask
I-
in a different way, could the letters be white like the sign that is on the canopy versus being red? Everything have the accent of red.
Because yeah, that's another option. Because I like the white sign on the canopy, so that's another option too.
Well, what we had done on this is one of the things we did look at a white version earlier on. It kind of it blends into the background because of the white building, and it didn't seem to quite. I mean, the point of the sign is, obviously it's several reasons for it. One of the points though is so that it stands out. And that's what, after looking at some of those options, this is where we had ultimately arrived at. Then the splash, we use the red as a splash of color rather than a white awning or down below. We looked at it both ways. Felt that the white would get dirty down below as a canopy. So we felt that we'd switch the colors around on that one. Because it's on that dark background, the white shows up very well. Does that maybe answer the question, or?
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. You already have the gray background on the cube, and the white lettering would be in the background. Because I'm not saying to get rid of the gray that's already behind the red lettering. The gray can stay, just maybe turn it into a white lettering, just like you're doing on the canopy and the white lettering. Or another option is maybe the gray background and the white lettering, and maybe have the lettering edges to be red. Have you looked at that?
Dante, I don't know if you want to chime in on this.
Yeah, hi. Good morning. I think it's kind of what you asked in the beginning there. The color of the sign and the letters and the way it's designed, it's all tied into the full package and presentation of the restaurant, between a lot of internal design elements in the space, the menus, the business cards. It's all part of that package. The color, the colors that were chosen, just the style of it. I mean, there might be some variations we could come up with, but at the moment, that was kind of, what we tried.
Yeah, this lettering, this red color looks nice. I'm just looking at the projector sign. The red color is just so strong. Just wondering how you can duplicate the canopy and the white lettering on the cube. I don't have no problem with the gray cube background. It's just the red lettering is what I'm asking. Have you looked at that?
Now, Mike, is this PDF, is that an accurate?
Yeah.
Will it look that way live? When it's actually made, or is it just
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, the space between the lower, if you were to look at the building, the lower gray band or lower bronze band, and the cornice up above, is approximately 12.5 feet. So you've got about 6 inches top and bottom. That's pretty accurate. I mean, if it's off by an inch, it's not much more. I don't, yeah, I mean, these letters in white will, because the background is rather minimal, the cube background is rather minimal. The white letters will tend to kind of blend into that building wall behind it. That's what we saw when we looked at this initially, because the tenant upstairs routinely has their blinds drawn, and because of that, you essentially have like a white wall behind it. So putting white copy on it didn't really make sense. Conversely, on the storefront level, that's why we switched to the white letter, because it was a dark bronze background. We would have simply reversed the colors or gone all red, down there. I mean, there was a lot of thought put into the color schemes at the various locations of sign and canopy. It just really doesn't work well as a white letter.
Madam Chair, this is Tom Stransky from Gateway District. I might suggest maybe a different way of thinking about this. If you see the pictures that are on the screen now, there's a lot going on in this corner with the sculpture and the wayfinding, and there's actually a highway sign and a pedestrian sign there. So it really, to have the letters blend in more with the building is not really a great solution for the restaurant. But I see Commissioner Bailey's point, though, and maybe a different way of thinking about it is leave the letters as the red, but maybe to bring down some of the red is switch the red reveals in between each box and maybe flip it out to being like a lighter gray. So you still articulate the reveal and the shadow line, and at night it might glow red. But maybe that's a way to kind of tone it down. But I really think that for the benefit of for the restaurant, to speaking at a really busy corner to his customers, that the red probably really needs to stay that way, but maybe there's a different way of thinking about it.
I think that's a great suggestion to try to balance the desire to tone it down but keep the branding aligned with the branding. We'll move on to Mr. Strickland's question next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few comments. I very much appreciate that the applicant and the sign company were able to utilize the existing mounting brackets so they don't have to interfere with the exterior of the historic facade. So I appreciate that engineering solution. I'm wondering, the electrical feed to illuminate the sign, are you using the existing conduit, and is that concealed, or is there exterior mounted conduit that has to be added to this?
There is existing conduit. It is exterior. We will reuse it. If you go back to, I believe it's page 4, you see the conduit coming up the corner? Yeah, it's coming, it pokes right out of the lower bronze area. It's located right inside that column is where the power is coming up, and it does come up the outside of the building, about 2 feet to the lower, or 2 foot 4 inches to the lower bracket.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, we're gonna reuse that though.
Well, that's good. They're able to reuse that feature as well. In terms of the sign itself, the actual lettering for the word sushi, when looking at the
Got a picture.
sign, I have a hard time reading that in this view. Would you consider outlining the red letters with white so that they stand out more, so that, or is there white outline around that? It's just the red letters.
There really isn't, but Dante, what's your thoughts on that? Dante?
If you're able to read it a little better and it is illuminate a little better, I mean, I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
getting
I
them.
think at night it's going to show up very well.
I mean, if all that's necessary.
Yeah, the only problem is to make a white outline on the red lettering. We would do that on the face, which means we may be inconsistent with the color of the red. I'm sure we can work something out on that, though, if that's a major sticking point.
Do
At
you-
night, that thing's going to show up pretty well. It is the secondary information as well. It isn't the only. It was something we felt was important to have on the sign, but as a secondary piece.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe slightly more spacing.
Want to consider, just make sure that it is readable and distinguishable from the appropriate perspectives as you're coming down the street.
We could open up the spacing by decreasing the size of the letters slightly.
That might be.
Yeah,
beneficial.
we'll drop them down. We'll drop them down slightly, and we'll drop the lettering size down slightly to open up the spacing a little bit.
I think that'd probably be a good solution. All right, other than that, I have no problem with it at all. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have no other hands raised at this time. And now Ms. Bailey has raised her hand.
I'll
Okay,
make a
sorry, I was on
motion.
mic mute. I'd like to just give my comments. I'm sorry, I was actually on mute. I would have to say I agree with Mr. Strickland's comments that the sushi does become a little bit difficult to read, especially from the rendering when you're further away. Just I think reducing the size of the lettering and spreading it out would make that more legible, because like from this view on a smaller screen, which is similar to how you'd view it in real life, the sushi is not very legible. I do like the recommendation of Mr. Strinsky about looking at your edge band color. I think the red banding in this perspective also starts to fight a little bit of the letters and take away from the name rather than add to it. Obviously I like your night shot the best because the letters are so legible. So I would recommend looking at that color and either on the edge banding and or the recess, and looking at, if it's a gray shade of gray, that would be better there, or just keeping it your current Pantone 432. Because here you don't see the edge banding in your sign, to me is personally more legible than the one where you actually see the edge banding. So I would recommend reevaluating your edge banding color.
You're talking about the reveals in between the cubes?
I would do both. If you turn to your technical drawing, it talks about the 2-inch red
Page
band.
1, please. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay. Yep, right there. The notes say 2-inch red returns, on illuminated channel letters. Oh, okay, so that's the channel letter return. Got it. Sorry, the rendering, I thought it was actually on the cubes itself.
You're seeing the sides of the letters.
Got it.
And at night, that won't be illuminated. Obviously, that's why you're not seeing it in the depiction on the right.
Got it. So then I would do the reveals. I would look at that color as Mr. Strinsky suggested, that maybe during the day it's not as evident, but then at night it could glow the red to give you that accent, just to lower down that contrast and the busyness on that corner, since it is pretty busy there with all the other elements. Is this going to turn off at a certain point of the evening, or what's the schedule for illumination? I don't know if there's, Mr. Strinsky, are there times for the districts that signs can be lit and not lit?
Not for traditional signs like this. When they become animated signs, yes, but not for a sign like this. Unless the tenant, the landlord tenant has things that I'm not aware of. So no.
Okay, thank you for that feedback.
Dante and Pat, do you have any thoughts on when the sign will be turned off at night? I mean, is it going to stay on? Is it going to be a photo cell controlled, or are you going to have it turn off like at 2:30 in the morning, 2:30 a.m. or?
Close.
I would imagine, there would be a timer and it would go off at, by 2:30, 3 o'clock, once everything's closed. But I mean, also I would probably see what happens on that street. It seems like East 4th always has those Christmas lights. Those are on all the time. I would kind of follow what everyone else is doing on that street.
Okay, that makes sense. Every district is a little bit different, so thank you for that reminder. And coordinating with your neighbors, I think, would make the most sense. I think those are all the questions I had. Any other questions or comments from the commission, Ms. Bailey?
Can I make a suggestion on the sushi before I make the motion? Even if you make the text smaller, the spacing in between the text is still close. It might still be hard to read. I'm just wondering if the text might be changed and have some spacing, or keep the same text somehow, have some spacing in between the letter. Maybe Mike can see it better. But look at that too.
Well, by decreasing the letter size, it'll allow. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, by decreasing the letter size, it will open up length. The letters become a little smaller, they become a little narrower, so it will open up some length so we can increase the spacing between each letter, which is going to make it a bit more legible. As you decrease them, they become narrower as well. So we're probably going to decrease it to about 6, and that should open up about 1/4 to 3/8 more. It'll be noticeable. You'll notice the difference in the legibility.
So you're not just taking the letters and going to shrink them this way. You're going to shrink each letter, but keep the length so that it provides more spacing between each letter.
Right. The I will be in the same location. The S will be, the first S will be in the same location. But by decreasing all the letters, it will allow for more space in between.
Any other questions, Ms. Bailey, or would you like to put forward the motion you were going to previously?
Yes. The motion is the accept the design as presented, but with the suggestion to look at the reveal color in the background, the sushi sign to change the sign as suggestion, and also share that with staff, for their review.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'm sure I'll
Mrs.
second.
Thank you, Mrs. Tarasik. Any other further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Do we lose Don?
Mr. Colicchio, we discussed earlier about your vote. Is your vote still a yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
or I can abstain if that's preferable.
It's ultimately up to you.
And I'll abstain then.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we still have a quorum?
We still have a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
An abstention does not affect the quorum. Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes with one abstention.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your restaurant enter into the district.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Uh,
Evan.
May I ask
Thank
one
you very much.
question? May I ask
Yes.
one question, Don or Julie? Do we have any other approvals we need to? Is there any other meetings? Do we need to go to planning commission or anything like that?
No, this will not have to go to planning commission. Your next step will be to apply for building permits. And once we receive those, we can sign off based on today's approval.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our second applicant, located at 500 West St. Clair Avenue, signage and lighting for Aqua de Luca Restaurant.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bruce Farkas from Signature Sign Company. Also with us is the owner, Lola Sema, this morning, Terry Yule from the Yule Group, and Jeff Walters from Panzica Construction. So we're asking approval for two signs for Aqua de Luca, which is on the northeast corner of West 6th and St. Clair. This first sign that you see depicted is a sign that is going to be an under canopy sign, and it is going to be located at the entrance facing south on St. Clair. The next sign on page 2 is the sign that will be installed on the canopy, addressing the intersection of West 6th and St. Clair, and it will face southwest. On page 3, there's a plan view showing the sign that will occur on top of the canopy and address the intersection in the lower left-hand corner of the drawing there. Page 4 depicts both signs. The sign to the right is the sign at the entrance to the restaurant. That occurs under the canopy, and to the left is the sign that's installed on top of the canopy, and is at a diagonal, so it addresses the intersection. On page 5, there is a SketchUp depiction of the canopy sign at the intersection. On page 6 is another view looking north on West 6th. There is also, as a part of this presentation, lights that will occur under the canopy, and Terry Yule will speak to those presumably once we're finished with the signage, I would imagine.
I can speak to him, this is Jeff. I can either speak to him now or after the signage, depending on what the commission wants me. I'm assuming we'd vote on both of them.
Yes, we'll vote on both of them. Please just tell us, go ahead and tell us about the light right now, since it's up on the screen.
If you can go down, I'm not sure what page, 2 more pages, I think. This one. Okay. So there's a total of 9 lights. There will be 6 large ones, and then you have a cluster of 3. And within that cluster of 3, at the corner, we're going to have 1 large one, larger light, and 2 small lights. Then if you go back to the actual light fixtures, you go back to the pages. Whoops. There you go. I can't, it's hard for me to read that. I believe that's the larger of the lights. Get on my paper. So I believe we have a 28-inch and a 18-inch light for the 2 lights. And this is part of Lola's vision for her decor on the outside of the restaurant.
Excellent. Anything further on the signage or the
Uh,
lighting?
On the signage, these are very simple, straightforward signs. There are face lit, illuminated letters and the Trident logo. The faces are white on both. The returns are black, as well as the supports are black.
Okay, thank you. Feedback from the local committee.
Good morning again. Tom Strinsky from Historic Downtown Cleveland Design Review with my warehouse district hat on. The committee approved this after much conversation about scale and location. And we also approved the lighting as proposed.
Excellent, thank you. We'll move on to commission's feedback. We'll open up the floor. Questions or comments from the commission? Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for Tom, what was, can you share with us a little bit the nature of the discussion with regard to scale and location?
I mean, we just wanted to make sure that it worked, and you know, it's a unique setting with the canopy that both my committee and the commission approved, and so there was discussion about a traditional sign where you maybe put it on the corner, kind of similar to the Goma sign before that, and making sure there's signage for both the identifying the entrance, which is a new location for this restaurant. You know, for the last, 20 or so years. And so we wanted to make sure the wayfinding aspect was of it. Wanted to make sure the scale of the sign fit the corner and on all four corners. So we just, the applicant worked really hard to make sure that it was right. The rendering that you have before you now is actually an architect's rendering to make sure the scale was true. No offense to Signature Sign, but they're actually usually pretty good at making sure the scale is right. But the architect had a view to kind of get this view as accurate as possible to make sure we got it right.
My first impression with looking at this sign featured on the corner was that it seemed small to me, quite frankly. So when you talk about scale, that's why I was curious, because it doesn't seem to me to overpower the corner.
Well, yeah, and that's the balance, is we want it to be big enough, but we wanted to actually interact with the canopy because it does overhang the canopy a little bit. So there was a little bit of consternation and hand wringing over like how far over the canopy will start to look sloppy and things like that. So it very much is a balance of making sure it's big enough to speak to the corner, but not, so big that it looks weird.
All right. So you think the appropriate balance was achieved at this scale?
I believe so,
Or
yes.
at least the committee voted that. That's fine. I accept that. The other question that I have, in this view, it appears as though the lights are hung at varying elevations. And I wondered if that was depicted right and why that is.
This rendering that they used for the sign was an older rendering. So the plan view of the lights is more representative of what will be out there. They will be at one elevation, except for the cluster of three at the corner, and those will be at different elevations.
All right, that's good. Yeah, I was going to suggest that hanging them at a consistent elevation, except for those clustered lights, would be more appropriate.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? I guess while we're waiting just for other questions or comments from other members, I'll make my comments now. And I apologize if you showed this at the beginning, are the two signs, the one on the corner and the one over the door, the same size? Or is the one over the door slightly smaller?
The one that's over the door is slightly larger because we wanted to extend the width of that opening. It's inconsequential, really. I think it's an inch. The copy is, I think, an inch taller on the under canopy. Yeah, it's the lettering is 1 inch taller under the canopy than it is over the canopy, as it happens.
Interesting. I guess I would have assumed and probably preferred that the one under the canopy, just because it interacts with pedestrians, was slightly smaller than the one over, which is really more for car, review. What is the total length of that sign and height? The one over the door?
The one at the entrance is 19 feet, 8 inches. From tip to tip of the logo.
And Madam Chair, one thing to remember for the commission to remember in terms of the scale of the canopy, because it's interacting with the entire storefront, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, it's 14 feet off the ground. So it's a typical, it's taller than you would typically interact with maybe an awning or something. So there's a lot of scale here or space here for the signs to interact with.
It's 14.9.
It's even taller.
So that helps. That helps. I did not know it was that tall. And what was your rationale? Just the one over the canopy is the same length, but not as tall. Is that correct?
No, it's to scale. So the one over the canopy is 1 foot 1 inch copy and is 17 feet 6 inches long from tip to tip.
Got it. So it's proportional, just reduced down by the 2 feet.
Exactly.
Carl, could you go back to the elevations that show the sign over the entrance door, please? I can't see the sign with this view that you're up right now. I don't know if it's just my screen.
This does show the one over on the corner and the one over the door.
I had my screen blown up, so I couldn't see it. So now I can see it. Thank you.
And the rationale of reducing down the one on the corner was because, like you said, to make sure that it wasn't overlapping the canopy too much, but enough. That's why that one's actually smaller than the one over the door.
And there was a concern about the height, the overall height of the sign and how it interacted with the windows in the building on the second floor. So there was a balance there.
I see. Interesting. I guess my preference, I don't know. I just want to make sure the one over the door isn't too overbearing in size wise. So, since this is more for the pedestrian than the vehicle, right? So something to think about of the scale of that sign. Is it just contemplating if it's the right size or not, or if it should be similar to the one in the corner? But understanding more scale here than typical below a canopy. So that's my feedback related to it. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Bailey?
I like the design. I just don't have a small comment since we're on the photo. Just want the other everybody else take on it. The two support that's holding up the larger sign. What if you make the color a little lighter that it can blend in with the fork design and the background of the light color, so you won't see the support, or it could just stay the dark color. That's just a thought.
I personally like the black color because
Okay.
it recedes versus a lighter color that would come to the focal point. So
Okay.
that's just my personal preference. I do like the black
Right.
the way they have it.
All right, that's fine.
May I say something?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Giancarlo.
I think, there's been a lot of thought into this. It looks quite elegant. And I think the sign over the door is mostly directional rather than really identifying the space. And I think the overall lightness of this corner now seems to be quite appropriate to this building and to the city. And I think I'm very happy with it, actually. That's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion then? Go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
I move the design as make a motion to approve as presented for the two signs.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, just make sure that we include the light fixtures in the motion.
Thank you.
I alter the motion to include the light fixture and share that with staff.
So just for, do we have a second and we can we'll clarify the motion is for approval of the two signs and the light fixtures below the
And
canopy.
the light fixtures, okay.
So that's the full motion.
And I will second the full motion.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? No? Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your restaurant join the community there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant located at Platform Brewery, 4157 Lorraine Avenue, renovation, installation of shipping containers, landscaping, site improvements, signage for the lot beer garden. The applicant, please use the raise hand function and tell us about your project. The applicants can unmute your microphones.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
This is Matt Orheck with LDA Architects. All right, so we've been working with Platform Beer on an outdoor beer garden at West 42nd and Lorraine. The site is a former auto repair site that's been vacant for quite some time. I think they were operating illegally previously with no certificate of occupancy. And so the city, through the assistance of OCI, helped remove them. Since that time, the site's become very overgrown and is in generally poor condition. So we're proposing the rehabilitation of the existing building and lot to become an outdoor beer garden. You can go to the next slide. And so this is a slightly outdated version of the drawings that were submitted to the design review, but in general, it's pretty similar. So we're proposing several picnic tables in the front with a shipping container pergola type suites in the rear of the property. So I think we're showing 4 shipping container suites and picnic tables with fencing on the outside around the property, landscaping, rehabilitation of the single-story structure and basically an elimination of parking on the site. We're doing various site landscaping upgrades consisting of plantings, planting containers, fencing, everything necessary to make it a inviting environment for people walking by as well as visitors. You can go to the next slide. And so the work has been mostly completed and was completed under the state legislature outdoor COVID beer garden laws during the last couple months. And so we're trying to make this a permanent feature on the site and make this a permanent installation, as well as a building that will be longer than just a temporary beer garden for COVID. So you can see the images on the left of the existing site, and we understand it's a little bit confusing because there's sort of historic photos of what the site has been, and then these photos of what it is now, and then drawings of what more work will be. So we understand it's a little bit confusing. And so these are images of the containers and the beer garden that's been installed. As you can see, they're standard size shipping containers with openings cut in the side that then close after hours. So during operating hours, the doors are always open. There's picnic tables, sound, limited outdoor space heaters in those spaces, and those are all towards the rear of the building. You can see on the site plan, we're proposing a limited amount of lighting through string lights. And one caveat is that the updated drawings, the shipping container along 42nd Street has actually been moved closer into the site to allow us some additional tables on the outside. You can go to the next slide. And so these are just existing photos of the structure. It's just a 2-bay old car repair shop that's in very much in disrepair. We're working right now to patch some holes in the ceiling for the interim so that the building does not continue to get degraded. Unfortunately, the building itself doesn't really fit in to the historic nature of the district as it is. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through this. Next slide. And so we have our demolition and our proposed plan here. So we're just going to reuse those existing bays, installing new garage doors, putting in seating, a small bar area, as well as restrooms for the entire site. And those will be accessed either through the garage doors or through a man door that's currently existing. We'll also be replacing and reopening some of the windows that are there to allow some light and sprucing up the outside there as well. Next slide. These are the existing elevations. So right now it's just wood siding with various plywood blocking some of the windows, as well as deteriorated garage doors and wood trim and roofing. Next slide. And so what we're proposing is a relatively limited amount of work, but work that's going to have a drastic impact on the overall quality of the site. So we'd be replacing, installing and replacing new wood siding as needed, replacing the existing windows, new garage doors. We're proposing limited, a pretty flat, small sign above the garage doors, fencing around the entire site that would be a 4-foot vertical picket fence, aluminum picket fence, as well as improvements to the site as well with planters to help soften the site and block some of the views of the containers. These are the west and north elevations. On the west elevation, you could see we have a space allocated for what would be temporary signage that could rotate depending on whether there's events or a beer release or that sort of thing. That would just, we envision that being a vinyl sign that could be removed or installed fairly easily and swapped out easily if it started to deteriorate. On the north side, we're replacing the existing garage doors, as we said, with glass style doors to allow light. And if the weather was inclement, we had to close those. Very similar to the brewery that's on Lakeside in that sense. You can go to the next slide. And so these are more views of the other elevations, including the shipping containers. So as you can see right now, they're usually 3 or 4 doors. They're wooden doors that have been installed sort of in a guerrilla type fashion to allow them to be closed at night for security, but easily open during the day and provide respite from the sun, as well as inclement weather. They typically have picnic tables in, some have couches, that sort of thing. They would all be painted black with wood trim on the door sides of them. And then they're all standard size shipping containers as well. You can go to the next slide. And that's it. So one modification to this is that if you go back to the site plan, one modification that we presented at design review a few weeks ago was that, as I said, that shipping container on 42nd Street would actually be pulled off the property line within our zoning setbacks. So we wouldn't envision needing a zoning variance for that. And we would actually reposition the tables along the street there to create a softer environment. And that container would actually have openings on both sides. And so we'd install a California style door that would lift up vertically and serve as sort of an awning on the west facade. We'd also agreed with design review to install additional landscaping along the Lorraine Avenue frontage. So how we have shown here, we have the planters on 42nd. We would continue those along Lorraine Avenue as well. We also envision a man gate where that curb cut is. So right now, the site is in the pedestrian retail overlay. And so we, in order to promote that, as well as just a lack of a need for really much of an automobile access to the site, we're envisioning putting a gate there that would allow for the flexibility, but would be a two-door gate that half could be opened for pedestrians to enter the site. And that would be our main access point. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions, unless my colleague Steve's on here and has any additional feedback or commentary.
Yeah, I think just as Matt said, we did move the one back on West 42nd in response to our first Ohio City Design Review meeting. So we did meet with them twice. So we think that was a very good improvement. And I did send Carl. I forwarded you that updated submission, so you do have that for your record.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that update. Feedback from the local committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Donna Grigonis with Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West Development Corporations. So this proposal did come before the local committee, once for conceptual as noted, and then again for final. The local committee was fine with the overall design and did approve it as presented, with the suggestion to add planters along the Lorraine Avenue side of the site, which Matt noted, and also which would help soften the edge of the site along Lorraine. And they also noted that they'd like the removal of the curb cut. The committee did express concern over the gate at the front and adherence to the PRO with the request of the removal of the curb cut on Lorraine. As an organization, we generally do not support non-compliance to the PRO, which is really important for us to note. It is vital to remove this curb cut for the future plans of Lorraine and the cycle track. And again, compliance to the PRO is very important to our organization. There is an alley access on the site and at the rear, and there's also an existing curb cut on 42nd that could be explored. And I know there was discussion of that at the conceptual review during their first meeting at local, but then they came back with the existing curb cut being used still, and that might be an issue. So just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback from, looks like we do have someone from City Planning, Mr. Moss.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Matt Moss. I'm the neighborhood planner with the City Planning Commission. And I want to comment briefly on I think a point Donna shared from the review with the local committee. Overall, the site plan and use seems really appropriate. It's great to see these formerly auto-oriented uses on Lorraine be converted into uses that really generate a lot more pedestrian activity and create more human presence on the street instead of automobiles. And but that said, I do want to echo the concern about the curb cut on Lorraine. While I do believe that based on this use, how the site has currently functioned during the pandemic and how it's intended to function permanently into the future, that would be a low usage activity. But our focus in shifting the built environment is as land uses change and shift over time, to be able to enact permanent changes to the streetscape and to the built environment that trend towards the type of activity we want to encourage, regardless of what the use is on the site. So with that, I would encourage a revision to the site plan that keeps it generally the same, but perhaps relocates that curb cut to or that access for deliveries to the side street, where we're really encouraging and requiring through our code that those auto uses be directed and oriented in order to enforce a more cohesive pedestrian environment and create a more cohesive pedestrian environment on Lorraine. So it seems to me like it'd be a minor change to the site plan, but something I would strongly encourage the commission to consider and the applicant as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pettit, you also had comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that Landmark staff support the use and the current proposal, but we also support the desire of the City Planning Commission staff and the Design Review Committee to eliminate the curb cut on Lorraine Avenue.
Thank you. We'll move on to feedback from the commission. Questions or comment, Ms. Bailey? Appears you have your hand up first.
All right. One in the comment I was going to ask to go to the site plan, so it was switched over while you were talking about it. Just to get a clear understanding, the shipping container was already on the site, or this is something new. That's what the presenter was saying. Is this something that's already on the site?
Sure. So the
providing service already.
Yep. So the short answer is yes, the containers are already on the site. They were put there at the beginning when the COVID outdoor dining legislation was first enacted for the outdoor patio. So yes, they are there already. Right now, the container that's on that 42nd Street side is would be within the setback. So we actually are proposing shifting that a little bit from where it sits at this exact moment.
Okay, so this project is related to the existing building, not the shipping container, right?
I would say both. So the rehabilitation is the existing building, which is shown on this plan as the one-story structure, and then the containers were placed there, and we're also seeking approval for them to exist there in the long term, with the improvements that we've shown to those. So it's sort of both. The answer is both.
So for the existing building, the color was red. Is that the existing color on the building right now? And in the new proposal, you're going to change the color to black? To the same color to the shipping containers?
Yep. So the I'll say historic color was the red and white, and then the building has actually already been painted the black to match the shipping container. So yep, you could see it, and go to that previous slide. You could see it. That's the existing building in the right corner, bottom right corner, as it is today. So it was that red, and then they've made some improvements to it in the last year to spruce it up a little bit for the time being. So right now it is that black color, and it would remain that black color, which is the same color that the shipping containers are painted.
So I wanted approval, you asking for the sign lock. So I see that on the building. So I did see the difference between the opening, you changing a lot of the opening, like the doors and the new windows. And I noticed on the presentation as you were presenting, the materials, aluminum and hollow metal that you're showing on there. Also, one thing I noticed, in the west elevation, it's a blank sign and it says temporary event signage. So are you planning on, like in the future, like if someone want to hold a private event there, they could put their own signage there? Why is it saying temporary event signage?
Correct.
Please.
Yep. So we envision that being a location where it wouldn't have permanent signage. So this is actually a really great sheet. So for example, on the north elevation where the lot is, that would be a permanent signage with metal lettering that would be there, till the lot closed or went out of business. And then on the west elevation, as you said, the gray area that we're showing as temporary signage, we envision that could be, as you said, event signage. If I had if Miss Bailey had her birthday party there, she could get a vinyl sign printed. You could install that there. If the brewery was releasing a special kind of beer, they could put that sign there. The Browns had a party, they could put a signage. There should be a rotating signage that would be most likely a vinyl banner type signage, like a construction banner would be made out of, and that would rotate and it'd be easily changeable.
The logo was designed. Did you add the planning, the comments on the south side on your presentation? Did you add that on there? On your recent design, the planning on the south side as the local design mission? Did you add that on there?
So the
landscape.
Yeah, so the increased plantings would be on the north side, on the Lorraine Avenue side. So these plans are a little out of date since we presented at local design review, but we would put those plantings that you see along 42nd Street, we would put those along Lorraine Avenue as well. And then we'd have additional landscaping in the area where the shipping container that's along 42nd Street would be moved. It'd be moved east. So down on this page, you'd be moving it down into the site more. So we'd have additional landscaping there as necessary.
And one more question about the business. Is this business going to be making beer or you just selling?
So it would just be selling beer. So Platform Beer already has a tap house roughly 2 or 3 buildings east on Lorraine Avenue from there, as well as production facilities in various parts of the neighborhood. So that it would just be serving. They wouldn't be brewing here.
All right, that's all my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the signage is part of it, the one that you have, the lot, that's part of this project, your sign.
Correct. Yep. And that would be a thin metal that's mounted pretty as close to flush to the building as possible. Each letter is about 1 foot wide by, I think it's a 1 foot 3 inches high, roughly.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're on this elevation, is that sign illuminated at night?
It is not.
Okay, it's just a dark sign.
Yep,
Okay,
just a metal.
Carol, can you go back to the site plan? All right, so I very, very much agree with the comments promoting the elimination of that curb cut on Lorraine. So I'd like the applicant to explain what types of deliveries are required to support the new function of this lot, and how the access off of Lorraine Court could be repurposed to serve those delivery functions to support the adaptive reuse of this building.
Sure. So as of now, the deliveries would be kegs of beer, cases of beer, lots of beer, and various, if there's any food being served, there'd be the materials and ingredients for that. Relatively a limited amount of delivery. So I think with the feedback in mind, we could certainly eliminate that curb cut. I don't think that that's a problem. With that, I think they probably would deliver through off of West 42nd Street. They'd probably park there and deliver. Right now, we're showing a gravel beer garden in that rear portion of the lot. So bringing the dollies back and forth through there would probably be a little more difficult. But certainly the paved areas, it'd be feasible. So we don't see a problem with that consent.
All right, well, that's great news. This site plan does not show the curb cut that was mentioned off of 42nd Street.
Correct. So our original proposal, it's existing there. We played around with the idea of using that one versus using the 42nd Street curb cut versus the Lorraine Avenue curb cut. And just for the function of the delivery, we thought it was best for our client to use the Lorraine Avenue one, just because that's where the bays, the garage door bays were, so they could back a small Sprinter van type truck into there and deliver and use that and that would allow us to preserve a larger amount of outdoor tables by using the Lorraine Avenue one. So that's why we landed on that one. But we, understand that your concerns for the curb cut on Lorraine, and as a planner, I echo those as well. So that's how we landed on that.
So the applicant will commit to eliminate the curb cut on Lorraine.
Add a
Yes.
note about the
Right. And so utilizing the curb cut off of 42nd, will that require a reconfiguration of the table layout? As shown?
Steve, before I answer it, I think you had a comment.
Yeah. So just to go back to the curb cuts, just so that everyone's aware, the West 42nd Street curb cut is a brick apron versus the Lorraine Avenue is a concrete apron. So just be aware that it's a different, it's not as, it's probably slightly less functional as the existing conditions are, because it is it's old, it's been there a long time, and it's a brick, so it's less flush and level.
But just a question. I'm looking at this on Google Earth. I mean, it almost looks like there's two curb cuts, or is this just an extended concrete sidewalk that wraps around onto West 42nd Street? The concrete goes up to the street. Is that not technically a curb cut? That's just a loss of a curb?
I'm going there now. So
Julie, is your question regarding a curb cut on 42nd or Lorraine?
42nd. It actually appears that there's two from Google Earth, but it is a little, there's a approved curb cuts and then the modified curb cuts.
Yes, I see what you're saying. I think there are two curb cuts. There's one off of 42nd. There's one that would be the northernmost one. That is the one that we'd originally had on one of our plans. And then there's the southern one towards the back of the alley, which that one is the brick one, which may or may not be a approved curb cut. I can't speak to that historically, but
yes, I guess actually we would be using the concrete one, not the brick one.
Right. I mean, I think that's just, obviously there's some conditions here that could help, because obviously, like you said, for deliveries, understand you have big carts of beer that you need to get into the building and to the bar. So, I think that it would be ideal to get those trucks off of Lorraine anyways. So it seems like if you could use one of the two curb cuts on 42nd Street, it meets everyone's objectives.
Sounds good.
All right. I do not have any further questions or comments.
Okay, Mr. Dreyer, I believe you are next.
Thanks. So I just want to clarify again. So we're being asked to approve what already basically exists. Is that correct?
So we're making yes, as well as some additional site improvements as well. So these were done as part of the outdoor dining legislation. So we're looking to memorialize those into the future so that we can continue to use this as an outdoor space, so that once that expires, we don't have to eliminate the use of this site.
I was unaware that legislation allowed you to actually put up structures, but so that's why I'm asking for clarification, because I'm a little surprised. How permanent is this? I mean, is this a permanent addition to the site?
That's the intent. So the obviously the structure is there, and then the containers would be there permanently. They're being they're refinished and painted. So unless they needed to be removed for some sort of deterioration purpose, that's the intent, is to keep them.
The existing parking lot that's on the site plan, is that your parking lot, or is that just anybody's parking lot?
Which portion are you referencing?
On the south side of the site plan.
Oh yeah.
Page
that,
south.
Yep. So that is not our parking lot. That's a unimproved lot, vacant lot that's paved and owned by a different owner.
I guess my final point is about signage. I'm not bemoaning it, but I'm surprised that the signage is so minimal. And I'm also surprised that there doesn't appear to be a platform logo anywhere. But again, I'm just pointing that out. I'm not pointing it out. I do have a concern about the temporary signage. While conceptually, it's all very nice. In reality, those signs tend to go up, and they are anything but temporary. And so that's the one sort of sticky point that I'm trying to resolve. Okay, that's all for me.
May I say something, please?
Giancarlo, let's let Michelle go next, and then we can get to your comments if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Michelle. Oh wait, actually, that's you, Giancarlo. Sorry, you come through as just Michelle, and it's Michelle Anderson.
Okay.
Hi,
Well,
Giancarlo.
thanks. So concerns, as Mrs. Blair, about the temporariness of all this. Also, we talk so much about the curb cuttings, but they're already there, aren't they? If I remember correctly.
Sure. So one thing to note about the curb cut is because, and this is in defense of the committee's comments, because the property is changing its use from the auto repair shop to the beer garden, this is an opportunity for the city to require the abidance of the PRO, which is why there's been the opportunity to look at those. So typically, if we were going to do a repair shop, we probably wouldn't need to have that discussion, but because the use is changing, that has generated that discussion.
Okay, also, personally, I'm not a big fan of container architecture in an historical neighborhood. Having said that, I think my even bigger concern is maybe about the of the whole thing. I mean, since it's going to be a garden, I would like to see lots of plants and lots of flowers and lots of greenery to soften the whole space up. When you have all those picnic benches and crushed stone pavements, it doesn't really lend itself to a kind and, environment. What is the plan for landscaping? How will that be done?
Sure. So we are proposing plaza planters throughout with the plants as indicated on the right on this slide. So those would be throughout the entire perimeter of the site, as well as areas on the south along Lorraine Court as well. And I think with the incorporation of the string lighting, that kind of helps to create sort of a whimsical atmosphere as well. And the The containers do on the sides that have the doors, they do have a light colored wood on that portion, so that does help with that. And the incorporation of numerous picnic tables does, I think, help to soften that up a little bit as well. And this is also a platform as a brand does a lot of activities, so they constantly are bringing various activities or cornhole games or that sort of stuff into the mix. So I think they things that would not require any sort of additional kind of entertainment legislation, but would just sort of be an accessory to a beer garden. And so we if it made a difference, I think we could propose additional planters on the interior of the site, but right now that's what we were proposing, is more of an exterior softening between this environment and the street.
Okay, my other thought is that since it is potentially going to be a permanent feature, what about in the winter months? I mean, we'll just be simply abandoned and let nature take its course, or
Nope. So they've been operating throughout the winter this year as well. So they have the containers do have, I believe they're electric powered space heaters in them, so they can open those up and heat them like an outdoor restaurant would in the fall and in the cooler months. So they've been operating throughout this year.
I see. So I would think to me, it's very important, the landscaping arrangement, and it should be something permanent, and they would add an element of permanence to the whole complex. And also, considering the winter months, plants that would remain green or not grow, but remain at least green and visible and attractive in the winter months.
Sure. And I believe we do have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, we do have some evergreen type plantings incorporated in there that should stay green year round.
Do you have a landscape?
Yeah, Taylor, go ahead and you can comment on this. Our landscape architect, Taylor's the best to answer this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the main tree that you have within the planters is that fall cypress, so you get year-round interest. And then the additional plantings, which you can see on the sheet, is labeled fall, spring, summer, and winter. So, they're seasonal plants, so they can plant within the certain seasons to create those seasonal interests, or they can just plant certain things that create year-round interest. So just kind of giving those options, but your main focal point is that fall cypress that is the year-round interest, and in addition, like I said, to adding in some flowering pieces throughout the years.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Anderson, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand. I do believe that outdoor dining is going to continue to be favored by a lot of people even after the pandemic. So I commend Platform on their long-term view of this. I also am happy to see that they are putting some plantings, some colorful perennials or colorful annuals in the beer garden. I agree with Giancarlo. I have not been able to warm up to the whole shipping container aesthetic. I will be very happy when the shipping container fad finally goes by the wayside. But for the time being, I guess they're there. And I just want to understand the shipping container is going to be moved to a less visible location. Is that correct? Down to the street, and it's going to be closer to the existing building. Am I hearing that?
Yeah, so sorry if I don't answer this correctly. You guys froze on me for a second there, but you're referencing the location of the westernmost container along 42nd Street?
Correct.
Correct. So that one will be moved 10 feet to the east. And so that essentially that container would flip with those two benches that are there. So we would bring the container to more to the east, and then we would put a series of picnic tables as well as additional landscaping along the street there. So it would be similar to a continuation of what's in that on that northern portion of the 42nd Street portion of the site plan. And then we'd have that side of the shipping container to address some of the comments on the starkness by the local design review committee. We're actually going to open that container on both sides. And so that would have a California style garage door that would open up vertically and then sort of sit as an awning while it's open on that side.
Yeah, my only further comment is, you know, whatever you can do to obscure the starkness of the, I think would
Sure.
really benefit this project.
Mm-hmm. And that side we will. So with the addition of the doors on that facing 42nd Street, as well as some wood cladding on that container, we're addressing that. So I think that's in the updated packet that we presented at design review and that we've sent Carl, that we've addressed that on that portion of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bailey, I believe you're next.
Your fencing, is it going around the whole entire perimeter, or is it just in the area that doesn't have the shipping containers?
Nope. Yeah, it goes around the entire site. 4-foot high metal picket style fence.
And I like the idea that you have two different site material, one half, and it's picket fence, it's wood, right? And what color is that going to be? Black?
The picket fence would be a metal black picket fence.
It's black, okay. It's not wood, okay.
Correct. It's metal.
It's metal. Do you have all right, I see. I don't see much of a detail. Maybe you want to give that to staff. Also, and I mentioned about the site, how I like the idea you have part of it is gravel and the other part, half of it is asphalt. Mr. Strickland mentioned about the sign, the lot, and he's mentioned it, it's not going to be eliminated. So is that your intent, not to add light to it if you have an event at nighttime?
At this time, there's no lighting on the signage, so if we did that, we would have to come back for approval on that. But at this time, that's not the intent to light it.
That's not the intent to do it right now.
Yep, and the north elevation would have string lights on it as well, so that will help provide general ambient lighting of the site as a whole, but nothing that's focused on the signage itself. No.
So back to the temporary board. What material is that due to it being on the exterior? Then how long, the reason why I'm asking the material, whereas it can last long. So what's the material made out of?
So that I guess the footprint of that gray space would be wood material similar to what the wood of the building is.
Mm-hmm. And how thick is it projecting off the face of the building?
Steve, can you provide some insight on that?
Yeah, so I think it's actually recessed. And it is currently.
Oh, it's recessed, it's not projecting out, okay.
And it's all wood siding, you know, so it's the same building, same material as the rest of the building.
Okay, all right. So it's no lighting coming out of it since it's recessed, nothing?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, there was just a few others. And just to get clarification on the curb cut, so the one on Lorraine is going to stay as is because that's where the delivery is going to come. There was one on East 42nd and that's been removed. So just for clarification, the one on East, on Lorraine is going to remain.
I think the intent of what, based on the comments from today, is we are going to remove the one on Lorraine and
okay, so all right, but traffic can still come in. Just the curb cut just going to be removed, but the vehicle can still come in for delivery.
Well, no, we would be making all deliveries off of West 42nd then.
On East 42nd Street. Okay, so it's going to be reversed. That's what I need to get clarification on.
And
All
just
right.
to clarify also, so even though we will remove the curb cut, we would still provide a pedestrian gate on Lorraine, because we would still want Lorraine to be the pedestrian entrance.
The pedestrian entry, but the delivery will come off of East 42nd Street.
Right, correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think my only comment, most people have made many of my comments, would be related to your door. You know, I think it'd be really nice if you could, rather than a hollow metal, since that is new, using a glass storefront. You know, obviously you're doing and working really hard to open it up and create the visibility in the elevation, and, you know, replacing that with a glass door would just really enhance, you know, and continue to enhance the elevation. I'd agree with the comments on the temporary signage that, you know, although I think I saw in some of your images, you actually already have platform signage there. I would support changing that from a temporary sign to a permanent, you know, sign. If it says platform like you currently have, I would support something like that. So I would suggest that you come back with us with a proposal of, you know, what you'd like to do there, hearing some of the feedback. I like the changes that you've made. I think the elimination of the curb cut on the front gives you probably better visibility because you can get more tables along Lorraine and planters in that area versus having to break it for that curb cut. So I think it's really going to probably improve your street curb appeal by doing that. And appreciate your consideration to change that and eliminate it, because I think, once again, I think it will work better for the neighborhood and probably for your business too. And then you already answered that the container. I personally don't mind container architecture because of the temporary nature, and that this is something that's temporary, and it gives you that flexibility to adapt some. Just want to, and I like that it creates a little bit of a garden feel in the center of this, rather than just tables, you know, adjacent to residential. So I like that it can be changed in the future without a permanent structure, personally. So those are my comments. Any other comments from other commission members, or would someone like to put forward a vote? A motion, I'm sorry, for a vote.
I make a motion.
Go ahead.
I was just writing the motion down. Landscape. Lord. The motion approved as presented. The temporary signage that to return to later in the future for that. The lot sign is part of the motion, approved as is with no lighting on it. That's the presenter's comment. The curb cut on Lorraine is going to be removed, but the curb cut is going to be added on East 42nd Street. I didn't see too much information on the fencing to provide material information to staff on the fence, and the landscape to add more, provide to staff on the north landscape information on that. That's all what I've been hearing so far for the motion.
Thank you. So the motion, do we have a second?
Bob, I second that motion.
Say that again, Mr. Strickland. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I said that I would second the motion as presented.
Okay. So we have a motion, we second. Further discussion. I think it was just brought up by staff that we don't currently have the current presentation, or maybe it's just didn't make the deck based on when it was submitted. Is that correct, Carl?
Correct. It was missed somehow, but I cannot access my emails at this time to pull up the current one.
Okay. So I think I will just clarify the motion a little bit, that the motion is to approve as presented with the following conditions to move forward with the recommendations, which this may already be included in your updated plan, but I think needs to be updated again. So we want a new plan to indicate the removal of the curb cut on Lorraine Avenue, the addition of more planters on Lorraine Avenue and West 22nd Street, and the relocation of the west container so that it is pulled east onto the site and allows more additional tables along West 42nd Street. And then finally, the revision to the signage on the west side of the building from temporary to something else. So those are the conditions. Did I catch them all, Don?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trout.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. And then please submit all of those revisions to staff again for final approval before submitting for permit.
We will. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 1899 and 1903 West 25th Street, storefront renovation, signage, outdoor patios, and parking lots for Kaloa Indian Barbecue Restaurant. Could the applicant please unmute your microphones and announce yourself and tell us about your project?
Hello. My name is Katie Seftis. I'm with Moss Architects out of Pittsburgh, and we're working with Chula Indian Barbecue to renovate the partial first floor of the Metzner building in the Ohio City district of Cleveland. You can go to the next page. This is just a context site plan to highlight where the site for the project is along West 25th. Kind of between Lorraine Avenue and Gold Court. You can proceed to the next slide. This is a proposed site plan of the extent that the project is renovating the existing Metzner building first floor. We're proposing, it's approximately a little over 3,000 square feet tenant space with a new restaurant or new covered patio at the rear of the building. Along with some sidewalk seating off of West 25th Street. We are also proposing that we are adding a new pedestrian access point from the rear West 24th Place to allow better pedestrian egress to the new restaurant. If you can proceed to the next slide, please. This is just some context photos of the existing Metzner building. Upper left-hand corner is the front facade, and the upper right-hand corner is the rear facade. And just some, the lower images are just some additional context information for your reference. You can move to the next slide, please. Proposed floor plan. So again, pretty open restaurant layout with the kitchen on plan north of the proposed layout. We are proposing, which you'll see in the following slides, new storefront, and we're going to set back the entrance to allow for ADA access into the existing building from the sidewalk. And there will be a folding glass door that will connect the new outdoor covered patio at the rear with the inside when season allows. Proceed to the next slide. This is a proposed rendering of the front facade, illustrating that new storefront system and canopy with a signage concept. So it'll be a black anodized storefront system with clear glazing, an open canopy concept, which you'll see as some additional images of later. But all of the existing masonry of the building will be remained. We're simply replacing the storefront that exists there currently with new storefront. If you can go to, there you go. This is the proposed elevation of the building. Sorry, it looks like this presentation was also slightly older, so we have a couple images that are missing, but that's okay. So again, the upper two floors, the second and third floor of this building are existing residential units. We are not doing anything to those floor plans or that elevation. Those are all existing to remain. There's no scope of work in our project. So we're really primarily looking at the two storefronts at the lower right-hand corner. Again, they're anodized aluminum storefronts. We are still evaluating manufacturers of those, but are leaning towards a Conair system. We have sliding operable windows on the storefront at the right that would have some seating just beyond that. And the reason we're still evaluating manufacturers is we want to make sure all of those systems integrate well together and they have similar profiles and kind of work together seamlessly. The lower left-hand image is a concept image that we've installed at other Chula sites for the canopy and the canopy signage. This would be self-illuminated signage attached to the top of the canopy. This is still in development with the owner and their signage consultants, so that would be something they would be coming back to review with both the Ohio City Design Review and Landmarks at a later date once that's fully fleshed out. But in general, the concept that we're showing is what they plan to move forward with. And that's the case for all the signage that you'll see on the following pages. If you can proceed, thank you. This is a enlarged elevation and floor plan illustrating that this new storefront is referencing existing context of other storefront adjacent to our project that will be existing to remain. So we're setting our new transom glass windows to match the transom heights of the adjacent storefronts, and that's also setting our canopy height so that we're really kind of utilizing that context to maintain proportions. And the enlarged floor plan again illustrates that setback for the entrance to allow that ADA accessibility. It shows the projected canopy depth of 30 inches and also conceptual layout for the front sidewalk seating, which also is still being pursued for a permanent outdoor restaurant, the appropriate permits for that by the owner. So conceptually, the size of this is what we are proposing, but that may adjust slightly as they work through that process. Next. This is a proposed rendering of the rear facade from the West 24th Place alleyway that runs behind this building. This illustrates the new covered patio area that we're proposing. This would essentially house the mechanical equipment that's servicing the restaurant, and the screening conceals that from the pedestrian view. There would also be some new proposed string lighting that would be running the length of the new pedestrian access point back to West 24th Place. This metal screening is a perforated metal screen with, I think it's 40% open area a round perforated pattern with a 3/8 inch hole diameter. So this would allow for obscuring of the mechanical equipment, but it would still allow some kind of light and views through where you are kind of overlapping with the air sky. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is the proposed rear elevation, and just illustrating again the perforated screen system that we're showing, kind of a more specific material representation of that at the lower left. And the image at the upper left would be a concept for this signage, which would be kind of cut metal letters attached to the existing brick chimney work. And you can go to the next slide, please. This is a spec on that perforated metal product. The image on the left is we have installed this at another site, so it just illustrates, as I was mentioning before, how that perforated screen can obscure when there are objects behind it, so it really doesn't show that mechanical equipment, but when there is sky beyond, it does allow some light through there. This is our proposed roof plan of that covered patio area, illustrating that we're just maintaining proper clearances for that mechanical equipment. We're proposing it would be a simple gray PVC membrane roof there. You can move to the next slide, please. And this is a elevation looking at the side of that proposed covered patio, illustrating that we're, again, keeping in mind sightlines from the alleyway to ensure that that mechanical equipment is truly screened, as well as maintaining proper intake clearances for that mechanical equipment from the residential units above. This is the proposed side elevation. This is if you're heading down West 25th Street away from the market. We are not proposing any work to the existing facade other than installing some new signage for the restaurant. This concept would again be similar to the cut metal signage that we were proposing in the previous slides for the rear chimney. Carl, does this include the parking in it as well? Okay. So a tangential project to this, which is not directly related to our restaurant fit out, but is required based on the addition of the rear covered patio, is the reconfiguration of the existing private parking lot for the Metzner residential units. On the screen, you see the proposed, or the existing, excuse me, the existing plan of that parking lot. The line in green is the extent of our proposed reconfiguration, which you'll see on the following pages. The line in red is indicating the extent of existing fencing that we would be demolishing as part of this project and replacing with new. And the line in blue is the existing fence and landscaping that you can see in the image and at the top. That's between us and the adjacent restaurant tenant. That would stay as is. We won't be touching that at all. Some more photos just of the existing parking lot conditions for reference. The existing fence is a 6 foot high black steel fence with an automatic sliding gate for access for the residential units into the parking lot, as well as the kind of existing dumpster on the corner of Gold Court. Next slide, please. And this is the overall proposed reconfiguration. We have an enlarged plan on the next slide that can give you a little bit more closer look up at what we're proposing, but overall, new fencing along West 24th and at Plan North between our parking lot and Gold Court, as well as some new landscaping to help screen that parking lot from Gold Court. The existing parking lot has 14 parking spaces. We are reducing that to 12, which meets the parking requirements of one parking space per residential unit. So we believe we're still in compliance with the parking requirements for the residential units, as well as it was viewed favorably when reviewed with the Ohio City Design Review that we're actually reducing parking since this is a pedestrian overlay district. We're also increasing pedestrian access from the rear, which was also viewed as a positive. So enlarged plan, again in red, this will be the extent of the new fence that will be installed. The fencing is the same spec that exists there today that we'll be using. We'll also be shifting the access point with a new sliding gate into the parking lot. And the existing trash dumpster and grease receptacle would just be replaced in kind in the same position. The landlord and owner is the owner for both of these properties. The parking lot spans 2 parcels, which he is currently in progress of getting the appropriate easements established so that this parking lot is able to span the 2 parcels for any future kind of development or sale of those lots. Next slide, please. This is the fencing spec. Again, this is we're matching the fence that is there now currently. The logic behind that is since we're keeping the fence between our lot and the existing or the adjacent restaurant tenant, that we will match that so it's very consistent and uniform across the site. It would be a 6-foot-high fence. And this final slide is the proposed landscape screening along the north side of the parking lot along Gold Court. The landscaping is a mixture of heights, so ranging from about 6 inches for low ground cover up to 10 feet. They're also all perennial, so that will lower maintenance, make sure that they're coming back each year. And a mixture of evergreens so that seasonally there's some texture and landscape screening that parking throughout the year. And that should be the conclusion of the presentation.
We can't hear you, Julie.
Yeah, we've lost you early.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
low volume. Yep.
All right, it looks like I'm having some issues with my earphones here. So Donna, feedback from the local committee.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Donna Grigonis with Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West Development Corporations. So this proposal for Chula came before the local committee, once for conceptual and then again for final. And there it was approved as presented unanimously. And then additionally for the parking that was proposed, or the parking changes that were proposed, the local committee approved those as well and commented that they were pleased with the amount of plantings and improvements made to that parking area, that it would be a nice change for that section of the rear of the buildings of West 25th Street. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Feedback from the commission. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Ms.
Okay.
Bailey.
Go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
I commend the architect. I really like the design, especially how you use the metal material and the color. I just only have a question. The awning on the right of the building, is that also part of this project, or is that owned by another user of this building?
You mean the image on the?
I mean, on the left, yeah.
That is an excuse me, there's feedback, sorry about that. That's an existing awning that is there now, and we're just illustrating that that will be removed as part of our project. It's currently covering up where our proposed new transom windows will be. Those have been all infilled solid and covered with the awning. So we're just, that image was strictly to help explain that we're kind of removing those elements that have been added over the years, but we'll be keeping all those kind of original masonry details, the piers and things like that.
So you answered my question. Why didn't you add awning on the right side of it? So you answered that question. So to answer to your signage down at the lower left, that's not part of this project. Is your concept is to extend the letter to project toward the building? Is that what I'm seeing right there underneath?
Yeah, again, that image is an illustration of something we have installed at other locations that we would like to also do here. This kind of extruded letter condition. And the canopy will be open, so you can kind of see through that, which we like as a nice, we think is a nice design feature.
That's interesting. I haven't seen anything like that. So when I walk underneath, I'll see the letter extruding toward the building. That's interesting. If you can go to the patio. I didn't see too much information on the furniture in your design. So is this something that's going to be changeable, or you didn't have any furniture information as part of your patio?
So it is movable furniture, so it can be reconfigured to allow flexibility for the tenant. But in terms of the design of the furniture, what we're showing is illustrative of their standard furniture specs, which is a color. Their branding colors are white and orange, and so this is representative of having kind of those colors illustrated in the furniture package. And it's unlikely that that would change. It would be fairly consistent, and the only thing that would really change is the kind of table arrangements.
Okay, all right. And one more last question, if we can go to the site plan where the dumpster and the grease trap is located at. I just have a question on how you can access it.
We did have our civil engineer do some studies for how the trash pickup will access that from the rear alleyway. So he did some traffic studies for us. Essentially, the way we have the dumpster angled is mimicking the way that the trash is picked up currently, on our understanding. And it allows them to kind of back in, pick it up, and then come back out. They are kind of tight with the parking that's on the right that's existing with the existing city lot. So we did really want to make sure that that worked for the company and for the tenants.
So the access is off the parking lot. They have to back in to get it. It's not off the side. That's why I asked that question, because I don't see any access on the side of it. So the only way they can get it is from the parking lot area. Okay.
They would come up the alley and
the alley. Okay. All right. Well, that's all my question. One of them was balcony with the railing, but I saw it on the drawing that there's existing conditions, so I didn't ask that question. All right, thank you. Good design.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carl, can you go back to that last image that we just clicked by, the south elevation of the building? I wanted to know if that was painted brick. I think that's the east elevation. On the south, is it painted? Yeah, that's it right there.
No, that will be metal, most likely metal letters that are attached into the mortar joints. It won't be painted.
Is that wall currently painted or is it natural brick?
It does have some old ghost signage that's been painted on it at some point, but it's primarily unpainted brick. And that was one of the things we reviewed with the Ohio Design group during our initial presentation, and so we eliminated any painting of any masonry for our project.
Okay, the way it's rendered there, it looks like a painted wall now, whereas that east elevation looks like it's natural brick. But so how will this metal sign be attached to the building?
That will still, the exact specifics of it will need to still be figured out when the signage company does the actual technical drawings for it. But the intention is that it'll be fastened within the brick mortar joints only. It won't be adhered to or fastened into any brick itself.
So it'll be like pin fastening in the joints.
That's what we anticipate, yes.
Which can be repaired if the sign is removed.
Exactly.
Right, and the same on the east elevation on the chimney?
Exactly. Those will both be similar.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission?
I just want to make the sign is for the metal is the same as what you have around the west, correct?
Yeah, this elevation and the elevation we were just looking at are both very similar signage concepts, and both the kind of illustrated image of what that might look like is both the top left image, the wall-mounted signage concept image, what that might be.
But we're not reviewing and approving signage at this time. You're going to review or return, correct?
Yeah, this is just general concept, and to make sure that there's nothing that seems like it wouldn't, be appropriate. And then we'll come back once we have the details for that. We aren't anticipating illuminating these two wall signage locations at this point. The only signage that would be illuminated would be the front canopy signage.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, I'll make my comments at this time then. I guess I think the signage on the south elevation to me is a little bit too much. There are precedents, and we've approved signage on the rear of buildings along with the front of buildings here because the main parking is in the rear. So I think there's opportunity for signage on both sides, but I only wonder if it would be, if it's appropriate on the chimney or closer to the canopy, since your canopy proportions are fairly large. It could give you that opportunity for signage there versus on the chimney. I think the pedestrian scale would be very nice here. Surprised you haven't enclosed the patio from the parking, because the parking is dedicated to the residents, correct?
It is dedicated to the residents. However, the tenant needs to access the trash enclosure through the parking lot. So we wanted to make sure we maintain passageway for that process.
I would encourage you to look at enclosing it. I think it would just make the experience on the patio probably better also, along with just security for the personal vehicles, knowing that an employee is different than the general public. Carl, could you go to the front of the building again?
Sorry, the
There
only
you go.
thing I would add to that is we are also very constrained on the site to maintain the parking that we need, and in terms of like maintaining sidewalk widths for that passage and egress. I certainly understand your comments about the separation, although I worry a little bit about having too many constraints on the actual operation side for the tenant as well.
Understand. That one's just my personal, just from a operations side, not an architectural side. I don't think it needs to be enclosed, but just for an operation security. I know often some separation makes the tenants feel better that their cars are protected. So I don't think that's something that would make or break, my feedback here or my approval. Related to the front elevation, I'm sorry if I missed this, you're removing the transoms that are above the doors along with the lower storefront, correct?
We are. The transoms have been infilled with just some kind of solid material over the time. So we're kind of removing all of that and replacing it back with transom glass.
Is there the opportunity to maintain the wood aspects of that transom rather than taking it all out? Because obviously the storefront's been renovated multiple times, so that makes sense to try to remove and get some consistency there. But if the transoms are the original wood, I would recommend maintaining them and just establishing the glass in them. Go ahead.
I don't actually believe that there's any of it remaining. It's in the images. I believe it's all like plywood that's been covered them up. As well as I think they're probably fairly damaged from the addition of the awnings attached into that transom area over time. So I'm not sure how much is really salvageable, I guess is what, in short.
Okay. I would still encourage you to explore how much is salvageable, and if it is, to maintain it, just because there is the loss of this throughout this area, and the storefronts to the north I believe, maintains their wood transom and just placed their storefront below the wood transoms. And if there's any opportunity to do the same, I would encourage you to do that. So I think it would really just allow this new design to work better with the historical fabric of the building.
Understood. Thank you.
Do we have a photograph of that?
The only one that's probably in that top, the image that she was just right there in the top left corner. When you zoom in, it appears like it could be wood, but that's where I don't know, and that's where I would encourage a little investigation about the transom specifically.
Yeah, I think that is the only image in this presentation we're looking at. Yeah, we can certainly investigate that more. I can't say definitively offhand, but as I mentioned, I believe that all of that transom has been kind of disfigured, for lack of a better term, over the course of multiple kind of iterations that have happened to the storefront over the years. The storefront that's on the lower right-hand side was completely replaced with aluminum at some point, and including the area that the awning is attached into. The storefront that would be on our left side is kind of a mixture of some wood and some aluminum elements that again has kind of changed hands multiple times. Unfortunately, there was an image that kind of illustrated the way that the storefront has changed over the years, but it's not included in this deck currently.
So back to the Madam Chair comment. So under the existing awning, based on the photograph we're looking at, it's not glazing or glass, correct?
Yeah, the in that top left-hand image on the right side of that masonry pier, that entire area has been replaced at some point with an aluminum system and the transom's been kind of concealed and covered up. And then on the left-hand side of that masonry pier, it is wood, but it's been all I don't believe there's any glass remaining in any of that portion of the transom. I would also add that, you know, requirements for structural headers for storefront systems, we have to replace the headers for both of these storefronts to be able to support the glass, both below and above. What is there currently is not sufficient to do that, and so that's going to require some interference in there regardless. But again, as I stated, I don't believe there's any of the original like leaded glass transom that you're referencing for the retail storefront that's at the far left of our building.
But there may be some to the left of that pier.
I don't believe so.
Underneath the awning, but you haven't investigated to pull those wood panels off to see what's underneath.
We have not fully demolished the awnings, no, to see what's behind there.
And have you looked for historical photos of this building?
We have, and unfortunately, the presentation that I sent did include those historical photos that showed that these storefronts have been changed out at least 2 to 3 times that we can find reference of.
Well, I agree with the chair's comments about needing to salvage those transoms, the wood framing of those transoms, if it's still viable. Now, do I hear you correctly that that first bay, the southernmost bay to the right-hand side, you've confirmed that that transom framing has been totally removed and replaced by aluminum?
Yes.
So it's just the bay to the right of that pier that may still be original.
Potentially, yes.
And from the photos that you've looked at, do you know what the mutton pattern is relative to the double hung windows above for that original storefront?
Are you referencing the residential window pattern?
Yeah, oftentimes the storefront pattern would potentially pick up those piers between the double hung windows for the second and third story.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mutton pattern that you have here doesn't bear any relation to those windows above. If you discover that the existing transom is salvageable, it may require an adjustment of the mutton pattern so that it's all consistent in the new form.
Yes. You know, because of how many interventions have happened with the storefront over the years, it was just, during design, it was just not really viewed as much to salvage, I guess. And in that, really kind of thinking of these openings as the true historic portions we wanted to maintain are these kind of beautiful masonry piers that's actually framing the storefront uses on the first floor. And so that anything contained within the piers and the existing lintel that we're keeping, you know, making that as a new, consistent, clean storefront infill that really is unifying those 2 storefronts as our new tenant space, rather than having maybe a slightly piecemeal situation that's, you know, not really showcasing kind of a nice design aesthetic. and really allowing that new infill storefront to contrast with the historic as a new thing, which is kind of clean lines, evenly divided mullions, and kind of overall clean design concept. If we are required to salvage any of the transom, I agree, we would have to go back and really evaluate how this front design looks.
Right, and I understand your perspective, and I know exactly what you just explained, but that's counter to the Secretary of Interior's standards that we work under, which advocates trying to save the existing framing infrastructure as much as possible for the original historical glazing.
And yeah, we certainly can go back and have the landlord try to pull off and see what is actually viable, and photograph that, and provide that information to you.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think it's premature as far as I'm concerned to consider this certificate at this time until that investigation is completed.
Can I make a comment? The center doors right here, is this also being new or existing?
The doors that look to be like a red-brown color?
Yes.
Those are existing to remain.
Okay. I was thinking to maybe table the front part and maybe the patio, not possible vote. That's a comment that Madam Chair can make comment on, but I don't think the whole certificate can be tabled, but maybe it's two different parts on here. So that might be an option to look at. And I still agree to look at the transom, the study was behind it, to see if the original preserved that. That's why I asked if the doors were original, also try to preserve that, but you're not doing anything with that scope of work. So I believe that needs to get looked at, the transom, to try to preserve that. So
Is that something that could be done? Does it require another presentation, or is that something that can be done as a follow-up staff review with your group?
I think that could be done with staff, and if staff is uncomfortable with the solution, then he'll bring it back to, or they will bring it back to us. Does others agree or disagree?
yeah, I agree. That was my other option, if the staff is willing to look at it without coming back.
Madam Chair, staff is agreeable to that. I support the commission's desire that they explore the existing conditions and that they document them. And I know we in our files will have records of all the changes to these storefronts over time. We also have historic photographs of the building, and I'm sorry they didn't get included in this presentation today. But I think at the pleasure of the commission, we would recommend having all that referred to staff. And if we find otherwise, we can always bring it back to the commission.
Perfect.
So based on this discussion, Madam Chair, are we talking about tabling this presentation until the investigation is complete, and then the staff could provide approval based on a revised submission or continuation of this submission, depending on what the investigation discovers?
I think that's an option, or the other option is to approve with the condition of reevaluating the transom to try to maintain it and submitting the revision to staff for approval. So I think those are the two options. Don, do you agree?
I would agree with that. I mean, my personal feeling is I feel we should act on the proposal today and not table it. And but to refer it to staff, and staff will evaluate and bring it back if we have to.
Okay, other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion?
I'll
Either
put
one of the
forward a
two
motion.
options. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, the two metals that we see on the chimney as well as on the side of the building is not part of this motion, but a concept was presented that the sign on the chimney could be somehow on the canopy, but that can be looked at later. But the motion would be to approve the patio and the front, but also include doing a study and investigation of the transom, present that to staff, and it's the staff to decide whether that can come forward to the commission or not. That's what I have so far. And also, there was also a comment, but again, it's up to the presenter. Maybe just look to see possible enclosing the patio, but it's not something you can, do definitely, but just look at it. But we are approving the patio as presented, as part of that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Alan.
So we have a motion and a second by Mr. Dryer. Any further discussion? All right, and Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed Mr. Kalikia.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the restaurant come forward in the district.
Thanks.
We'll move on to the next applicant located at 1454 West 58th Street. Oh, I'm sorry, 1454 West 58th Street window replacement. Would the applicant please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Madam Chair, I do not see the applicant in our meeting queue.
Okay. Then we will move on to our final applicant and come back to that one if he returns. The next applicant is located at 4909 Lorraine Avenue, Urban Community School. Site improvements, landscaping, signage and wayfinding, and campus master plan updates.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Gill. I'm the president at Urban Community. I'm joined this morning by our architect, Christine Raymond from Casmar Architects, and John Haggerty, who's our director of operations. I'm going to make some very brief comments just to give context to the campus, and then I'll let Christine take it from there. So we're at 48th and Lorraine, have been there since 2003. But we've had a lot of activity over the last 3 years. We have added a 10,000 square foot Urban Squash Cleveland facility, which is a high quality after school program and one of 25 chapters nationally. Substantial Metro Health Ohio City Health Center, which has primary care, behavioral health, legal aid, a WIC office, a food as medicine office, a pharmacy. And I just want to clarify that that building really is open to the entire neighborhood and not just to the families and students that attend Urban. And then we've recently completed an early childhood center, which will serve infants and toddlers from the time they're 6 weeks through their daycare years until they matriculate, hopefully, into our school. So, and the last thing is we will add soon the headquarters for the refugee response, which helps refugees resettle in the Cleveland area, and Facing History, which is a professional development program for teachers that teaches them how to teach issues of race and justice in classrooms with kids. So a longtime Cleveland organization that is also part of a national network. And we're really excited to welcome those two to our campus as well. So think of us as a longstanding school in Cleveland, but also a network of nonprofits aimed at extending our mission to educate and to serve the community around us. So that is my very quick intro for what you're about to see.
Madam Chair, if I may interrupt for one moment, please.
Yes.
Tom, good to see you.
You too, Ray. Thanks.
I'm going to recuse myself from this particular matter. I have known Tom for a number of years, and I know our firm has done work with Tom and the Urban Community School. It's a wonderful, wonderful institution. But I just want to let it be known at this point in time, ahead of time, that I'm going to recuse myself from this matter.
Thank you for making us aware prior to voting. I appreciate that. So
Christine,
please
I'll
go
let you
ahead.
take it from there.
Oh, great. Good morning, everybody. I'm Christine Raymond. I'm with Casmar Architects, and we're pleased to be before you today to present the master plan update for Urban Community School campus. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So last time I think we were before you was a couple years ago to present the Metro Health Center project and the Early Childhood Center project. At that time, we included our vision for the campus master plan, which you see here on the screen, which has been pretty much driving the bus over the years. So it's evolved, and as Tom mentioned, those buildings are complete. So if we go to the next slide, please. So since that time, the plan has been continually developed, including the North Plaza along Lorraine and the play space expansions that you see here on this plan to the south. So I just am giving you a snapshot in time. This was 2019 where we were. So now if we could go to the next slide, please. So we're here today to present to you the hardscape and landscape project that extends from Lorraine South to Turn Avenue, which is in the area of the vacated West 48th Street. So the street vacation is complete, and we are now moving into this phase of the master plan development. This plan, as you can see highlighted in red, it extends from north to the south of Turn Avenue. Now, the site that is also highlighted in red on West 47th Street, just to give you an update, that project has been reviewed and received Planning Commission approval for 2 of those 4 structures that are going to house nonprofit partners. Facing History within ourselves and Refugee Response are the first 2 that are going to be located there. So that's part of the master plan. We're not seeking approval for that today because we're focused on the West 48th Street vacation project, which has been submitted to the building department, and it's awaiting obviously your feedback and approval. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Great. So this view shows what is constructed today. Obviously, Urban Community School is on the right-hand side, the west side of this image. The area that we're discussing today is the West 48th Street, which runs from Lorraine Avenue south to Turn Avenue. To the left, the Metro Health Ohio City Health Center is complete and open, and the Early Childhood Center with the yellow roof farther to the south is completed and in use today. And then Urban Squash, which is at the farthest left, has been open for a couple years. So if we go to the next slide. So the project we're discussing today, starting at Lorraine Avenue, there is a open plaza that's going to be new hardscape, landscape, public art, seating, etc., which I'll get into that detail, but that's the north component of it. And then moving south, we're going to be able to complete the connection of the new east-west road that has been constructed in a couple phases between West 47th Street on the left and West 48th Street in the center. We'll be able to connect that road to the existing school parking lot, which will then complete the reroute of pickup and drop-off functions for the school. And then moving farther south, there is a proposed parking area between the existing gym and the new early childhood center. If you go to the next slide, please. So focusing in on the new plaza at Lorraine Avenue, it's going to be, as I mentioned, a combination of hardscape and landscape. The hardscape will consist of a unilock permeable paver. This has been used elsewhere on the campus over actually between, excuse me, between Urban Squash Cleveland and the Metro Health Center. So it's already on the campus. We're using materials that are consistent with what's there. There's an intermixed into that plaza are landscape beds and new trees, seating, etc. The lighting that we're proposing are on the left-hand side of this slide are 15-foot high column lights, which also have been installed on the campus to the south of the Metro Health Center. So we're mimicking those and extending them into the plaza. The trees will also have up lights within the landscape beds. The seating, we're showing a typical bench that would be purchased. However, a lot of what's happened over the last probably a year and a half has been meetings with stakeholder groups and Land Studio to come up with a public art plan for the entire campus. Land Studio did present the public art plan conceptually to the local design review last week. Again, it was just conceptual feedback, but so some of this seating might become actual public art. They may work with artists and students to come up with sculptural ways to provide seating in here. From the stakeholder sessions, which consisted of community members, teachers, donors, staff, everybody you could think of. We had 3 meetings with them, and having a place to sit and enjoy the campus, or while a parent is waiting for a student or someone is waiting for their appointment at the health center, public seating was very important. So we're incorporating that into this plaza area. There are currently installed 2 locations of bike racks, both at the Metro Health and near the Metro Health entrances. Those are already installed and would be maintained as a part of this phase. And then moving down to the center on the right side of your slide, this plaza, we're proposing a pedestrian kiosk. Also, again, as a part of those stakeholder meetings, wayfinding and safety was of utmost priority during those topics and the surveys from all the stakeholders. And so, this campus has grown over the years, and someone comes for an appointment, where do they go? This pedestrian kiosk will help guide them, but also will provide a way to, it'll have digital messaging. It's going to have rotating artwork, just be a real hub of information in this plaza. And then at the bottom right is the dialogue sculpture, which had been installed at the library downtown, and it's currently in storage, and it's been in storage for a while. Working with Land Studio, they are looking to have that reinstalled here at this plaza as the public art element. Now, the local design review committee did provide favorable feedback on that concept and that location for the at this plaza. One comment from the design review was the parking spaces that you see at the bottom of the plaza. They voted approval contingency upon removing those in order to expand the plaza from Lorraine Avenue towards the south. So if you go to the next screen, we've revised this drawing to show those parking spaces removed to basically expand the public space more into the heart of the campus. We're showing it as green space currently. We have lost a fair amount of green space over the years at the campus, and there's been some desire to bring back larger shade trees or something like that. So this might be an opportunity to bring in some of those elements there where we've removed those parking spaces. Next slide, please. Here is a rendering of the plaza from Lorraine Avenue. You can see the digital kiosk there, kind of center on your screen. And then to the right, the column lights, which will be marching along from the north to the south. As a part of this master plan development and the reviews with the stakeholders and et cetera, circulation was important. And so you can see there, the main pathway for pedestrians from the north to the south is going to stay on the west side of the former West 48th Street. So you can see that walkway sort of leading you from Lorraine to the south. It's going to be an 8-foot wide path that goes through the entire campus to keep students and families safe. And on that side, on the school side, separate from the traffic that is happening to the east at the Metro Health lot. So you can see landscaping, trees, and benches within this area. What's not shown here is that dialogue sculpture that we're proposing as the public art piece, but that could fit, the scale of that can fit nicely within this plaza. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial view of the parking that is proposed between the gym and the Early Childhood Center. Quite a long time ago, when prior to the Early Childhood Center being built and other developments on the campus, there was a parking lot where the Early Childhood Center exists, and that parking lot served the school. So they gave that up during the development here of these other projects, and we would like to basically replace those parking spaces that have been lost over the years within this area between the gymnasium and the Early Childhood Center. The Urban Community School was fortunate enough to be one of 2 grant recipients from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District this year for green infrastructure, and they would be using those funds to construct this parking area, which is entirely comprised of 2 colors of permeable pavement. You can go to the next slide. So we'll keep moving south, and then the south end of the West 48th Street and a portion of Turn Avenue, we're proposing expanding the existing playground, new play area, a basketball court. Years ago, there was a basketball court near that parking lot that I mentioned that was demolished. The basketball court was lost during the development to the north as well. So we would like to put that back for recess and for the school's use. And then the existing learning garden as a part of the Early Childhood Center development, a chunk of that land area was lost. And so in this project, we're able, with the vacation of Turn Avenue, to expand the existing learning garden to the south to replace what was lost and reinstall some amenities that the school was using in that garden. And then earlier I mentioned that pathway from the north to the south, which is on the west side of the gym. This area is the connection to that path. So during a lot of the master planning sessions, it was found that a safe pathway for biking and for walking was required from West 44th Street. So this connection will lead to the east to go towards 44th and ultimately connect to the Red Line Greenway. So this is able to keep pedestrians and cyclists coming to the school basically off the streets from over there, and they come through this area on this continuous path. And then also to the south, south edge, there will be some amenities. We're showing you the concrete ping pong tables that are proposed down there for the older kids as well. The lacrosse field will remain untouched, which is on the left side of your screen. And also on the left side, we're showing you the two colors of the permeable pavers, which would be used for the parking lot pavement. Next screen, please. So here's an aerial view of the completed project. I will note that also as a part of the public art plan for the campus, they're looking at painting or coloring that asphalt park basketball court that you see there. So while it's just shown as a typical basketball court paved, we envision that as being very lively and having being basically a canvas for artwork in the future, near future actually. So, and around this play area, there currently around the learning garden is some ornamental metal fencing, which will be repurposed and incorporated around the young playground area to the north here as well. The fencing that separates the railroad property to the south along the entire south edge of the campus will remain as is. Next slide. So here's a rendering of the completed project from the north, from Lorraine Avenue looking south. Next slide. As I mentioned, the plaza includes a digital kiosk. This is what you're seeing on the screen now is more detail of that digital kiosk. It's the only illuminated signage that's proposed for the campus signage. You can see that its scale in relation to a person standing, and it's this cube design, this rotated cube design with an opportunity to put rotating artwork and digital messaging as well. Next slide. So we now have a campus with a number of entities and organizations all located on it, and it can be a little confusing as to where people need to go. So near the center of the campus, right at that east-west road intersection, will be a unilluminated pedestrian kiosk that will be color-coded to direct folks to the various buildings, various parking areas, etc. Next slide. And throughout the campus, there will be identification signs. Again, during the master plan development with the stakeholders, there was a joint effort between Land Studio and Guide Studio to come up with the art plan and the wayfinding plan. And what you're seeing here would be representative of the family of signs, which are identification signs that could be located throughout the campus. You see the example of the learning gardens. This would be, the yellow one would be located near the south learning gardens. The green, it would be school identification sign. Next slide, please. Then again, now we have we need to make it clear for people of where they need to park, etc. So there will be interspersed around the campus these pole signs, which would be color coded again for parking to designate the proper parking areas. Next slide. I think that might be the last. Okay, so these last few slides, we included the landscape plans that were submitted along with the package for the building permit. So the landscape plans are in here as well as the architectural site plan at the end. So I think with that, I would welcome your comments or questions.
Thank you. Is there feedback from the local committee?
It's morning still. Good morning, Madam Chair again, and members of the commission. Donna Grigonis, Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West Development Corporations. So the local committee reviewed this proposal and it was approved as presented, minus 6 parking spaces at the northern portion of the lot that have since been removed. So they strongly noted that the site plan and proposal was a dramatic improvement to the current site conditions. And comments during the meeting were that the site seemed to be dominated by the proposed parking. And they also made mention that the proposed site plan seemed like a Band-Aid in terms of long-term parking. They suggested structured parking. During the meeting, expanding the Plaza South was proposed. And since then, the site has been amended. And those 6 parking spaces that were at the north end of the street vacation site have since been removed. But there was a lot of concern surrounding children and the way they would use the campus through the parking areas. But then the artwork that was presented there was no motion made on that, but everyone did seem to be pretty amenable to the proposed path-finding signs in addition to the artwork that would be on site. But the site plan was approved minus the 6 parking spaces that have been removed. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pettit, do you have some comments for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple comments. Staff has always supported the ongoing development of this campus. It's an important institution on Lorraine Avenue now, and the applicants have been very sensitive in all the additions to this part of the Lorraine Avenue Historic District. So we support the project. I think my only comment is to pick up on the comments of the Design Review Committee. There's still a lot of parking here. I mean, the overall effect is a lot of pavement. I think it's commendable that you added the additional landscaping south of the plaza. But I've always seen those 2 north-south and east-west axes as very critical to the feel of this campus. I've always thought of that east-west entrance as being like the grand entry to your campus. So I would just ask that if it's possible that you look at adding additional landscaping along those 2 north-south and east-west axes, just to reinforce and to soften the effect of all this parking that you have on the campus. So those are my only comments.
Carl, could you go to a master plan overall?
Mr. Pettit, can I just clarify? That's the entryway off of 47th to soften the north and south sides of that entryway?
I think the former West 48th Street, that's the north-south axis I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And then the entry off of 47th. I've always seen that as being a major focus of your planning. I just think more landscaping there. I don't know what that means, whether it's more trees or more opportunities just to define that. I think that would be beneficial.
This is where most people will enter the campus. So we are certainly aware of that and want it to be impactful as they enter and give them a sense of who we are. So Yeah, that is very fair feedback.
Other questions or comments from the commission?
Can we go back to Donna, since we're on the site plan? She mentioned that 6 parking lots were removed. Could she go back and explain where they were at, that, or maybe Mr. Gio can explain what was removed based on Donna's comments?
I guess I could speak to this unless Christine probably can speak about it more clearly. It's the brown spots. Oh, see, it's removed. Carl's switching back and forth between the two. Those were the 6 original spots that were on the site when the local review, when the local committee reviewed this site plan.
Right. Yeah, it's that green area now. It's green on that screen, right there where the hand is. Yep.
So that's where the parking lot removed. It's now landscaped.
Correct. We had to maintain a drive lane there to be able to circulate through, in and around the Metro Health parking lot. And it's intentional that the Metro Health parking lot, while it's not ideal, it does only have one way in and out from West 47th Street, because we're keeping that traffic away from students and parents and all of the school traffic.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Bailey, was that your only question?
No, that wasn't my only. I just wanted to, since we were on the site plan, I just wanted to kind of understand what was removed. But for clarification, a comment was made by Ms. Raymond about the benches. We mentioned that, is it the green benches that we saw is going to have artwork on there that's going to be painted, or artwork on them?
That's a great question. I was a little probably not clear. We are proposing benches, and the bench you see, there will be some of those, but I suspect that as a part of the public art plan, Land Studio and us, we will come back and say, well, we might not buy that many of those benches. Instead of a bench, there might be a sculptural artwork piece that you're able to sit on, right? So there will be some of these benches, but then there might be some more interesting seating options that come later.
Other questions, Ms. Bailey? You're on mute if you do. Oh, it looks like we've lost Ms. Bailey right now. Other questions or comments from the commission? I guess I'll wait for, or I'll make my comments at this point. Yeah, I think I support everything that's been said to date. I commend the organization for its continuous work to serve this community and reestablish things like green space in these areas that have removed so much and added so much hardscape, and trying to keep your program in balance. So I really like the plaza. I really would support, although it's conceptual, the addition of the artwork within the plaza. I think that would be, the kids would really enjoy that sculpture since it is so interactive. And if benches were replaced with artwork, I think that could be an additional great addition to this space. But we'd have to comment on that in the future. I think, Mr. Pettis' comment about, working for a little bit more landscaping at the entrance would also be warranted, just to try to bring some vibrancy and clarity to that entrance and dominance for all of the family members that will be using that as your main entry point versus the parking lot for the medical building, or the health center, health center. So overall, I don't have any issues with this, and I think it's a great, sort of revision and update to the master plan but would encourage you to continue to look for, additional green space opportunities near the school like you are doing already. Other questions or comments from the commission? Or would someone like to put forward a motion? Ms. Bailey, unfortunately, it still looks like she's having some connectivity issues, so I would ask if someone else would do the motion.
Madam Chair, this is Bob Strickland. I would move to approve the project as presented with the elimination of the 6 parking spots near the Metro Health lot.
Excellent. Thank you.
second that.
Thank you, Mr. Giancarlo. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? No? Okay, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey, Adrian, are you still there?
She left the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kalikia, Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik recused himself. Ms. Trott,
Yes.
the motion passes unanimously with 1 recusal.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you move this master plan forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll move on to administrative. We don't have any consent plans. Okay, so administrative reports.
Just a couple items, and just to clarify, did we table that 5th item?
Oh, yes. Thank
and
you for, I would say that one is tabled since it does not appear to have the applicant here.
Okay. Other than that, I just have, just wanted to point out that there's a meeting today at 1 o'clock regarding the proposal for the demolition of the Club Azteca building and the new construction. I don't know quite where we are with that yet in terms of, all the public comments and the various groups that are interested in that project. I expect that we'll probably have another meeting before it comes back to the commission. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. I think the applicants and the councilwoman are still working through all the issues there. And right now, I'm not sure when it's going to come back to the commission. It might be back on the 25th, but I have a feeling that it's going to require some more preliminary discussion before we see it again. Second item is that it is once again Harvest for Hunger time. So I will be sending the commission the forms for the upcoming year. I think I'll have to mail them to you because of the circumstances, but if you could just mail those back to me once you get them, and or fax them, I'll figure out what the arrangement is, but I'll get those to you in the next couple of weeks. Other than that, unless you have questions, I think that's all I've got.
All right, excellent. Anything else for today's meeting?
Sorry about the Wi-Fi issue.
We've all been there. Don't worry. All right, if there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn today's meeting. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks.